Hello, everyone. I am very pleased to be your panel moderator today, which is, in my view, a rather interesting topic, close to my heart as well, considering that most of the organization businesses do struggle to not only keep people engaged, but also motivated to help optimize, standardize, and automate their key operations or back office processes. Well, preferably the most boring and hateful ones, so they can really get rid of them. Okay, so let's assume for a moment that you are all fully embracing the digitalization wave and that you started experimenting with IA, intelligent automation, or maybe in an even more mature stage, that you set up your COE to help drive and keep the momentum. How can you keep feeding the pipeline of an intelligent automation with new ideas, but more importantly, with innovative ones? That's what really at the heart of this panel. As I always tell my client, not only you need to find the right processes according to your set criteria, whether it's FTE hours, average handling time, whatever, then you need to maintain them. But moreover, you need to keep your employees engaged and committed to help you upscale and build real momentum around your digitalization initiative. I have with me, well, I was supposed to have three, but I have two great speakers today that will share with us some ideas and experiences that hopefully will inspire or get you started on your journey. So ladies first, let me start with Caroline Gray. She's the EMEA Vice President of Strategic Partnership for UiPath. She brings a wealth of experiences in sales, solutions, and operations, which help bring changes in global complex organizations, such as EY, for example. She has been with UiPath for 2 years and is particularly passionate about customer experience and the impact of automation and digitalization on productivity and the future of work, which is really at the heart of our topic today. And I'm pleased also to welcome one of our esteemed clients, Dan Bujoreanu. Hopefully this is the right spelling and saying. Currently IT Director at Procter & Gamble, based in Bucharest, with 20 plus years of experience in the industry. He brings a wealth of experiences.
Close enough, Selma.
Sorry?
Close enough, Selma. Close enough.
Okay, very good.
On the name. Close enough.
He brings a wealth of experiences where he blends in people and technology skills, because this is really key. You will understand how he used that to his advantage, actually. He's in charge of the digital transformation of the European source plan pay operation at Procter & Gamble. His main focus is to drive mass adoption of self-service smart automation tools, such as Blue Prism for automation, Office 365 for collaboration, or Work Fusion. He's helping Procter & Gamble to move from human executed work processes to digitally executed ones. So without further delays, let's hear from Dan. So he can briefly share with us his experience on how he approach the biggest hinder in any digitalization automation project, which is how to engage people and moreover keep the momentum in building the pipeline and new requirements request while innovating. Dan, please.
Thank you, Selma, and thank you for your kind introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here today, with you and also with all the participants. So let me just say hello first to the participants. I hope everybody is doing well and staying safe. I personally am joining today from the comfort of my home office. Home office, I mean, it's a fancy name for my bedroom, right? So, but through the miracle of technology, I mean, I'm able to join this fine event without actually being forced to leave my home, right? And I'm sure that's true for many of us today.
Yes,
okay,
unfortunately.
Good. Yes. Good. So, I mean, to answer the question, I mean, I need to give a little bit of background on how we are approaching digitizing the operations for our Bucharest service center, right? And we digitize our operations by using what we call self-service smart automation. And what I mean by self-service smart automation is the use of visual programming tools. And you mentioned, for example, the RPAs or for example, other visual tools for data manipulation or data visualization like NIME or Power BI, right? So we're leveraging these tools, right? That basically really anybody can use, right? So these tools you don't need to be a person with IT background or technical background. Really anybody with any background can learn how to use them in a very short period of time. Obviously, this is a huge advantage for any organization because you're no longer, limited to a small number of highly skilled technical teams that will come in and will look at the process and then they will apply their technical mastery to automate the process. Actually, what you can do, you can have, normal people, if I can say so, meaning, people that have the business knowledge. And they can quickly learn how to operate these tools, and then they can automate their processes themselves, right? And of course, by doing that, you can go and do more, more automation and actually faster, right? But let me go back to the approach we took to digitize our operations, right? And we looked at 3 directions. The first direction, so the first step was, we need to define a structure. We need to create a framework to digitize the operations. And what I mean by that is, for example, we need to have a way of collecting ideas, right, from people, So how do we, what's our pipeline of ideas, how people can know to bring forward their ideas to us, right? So basically, how to build the portfolio of automation, right?
A sort
The
of
second step
collaboration
is
platform.
Exactly, right.
Okay.
So the second step is, okay, you have the ideas, you have the, let's say the requirements from people on what processes to automate, then you need a way to execute this, these ideas, how to implement them, right? And you don't only need to execute and implement, but you also need to do it in a way that it's efficient. So, for example, we have an idea in Bucharest, right? And we develop an app or a bot in Bucharest, but we are a global company, right? So we don't want to duplicate the same effort for the same idea in another site across the world, right? So we need to have a kind of a share and reapply, kind of a collaboration with either sites, right? Also, maybe the idea that we have in Bucharest, it's actually scalable and you can do it at the global level, right? So we also need a way to keep in touch and collaborate with global teams, because sometimes it's better for a global team to pick up the idea and develop a global solution. Right?
It's cheaper for you.
It's cheaper and more efficient,
Yes.
right? Exactly. And I mean, I think when people think automations, they think they go directly to thinking about what's the IT tool, right? The IT implementation, right? But there's actually a couple of steps before you actually do the the IT part, right? Which is, I mean, for us, for example, when we receive an idea, a request, we first look at simplifying the process, then standardize it, right, so that we can scale it up, right, and only then we look at automating, right. So anyway, first direction, first pillar was putting the structure in place, and as part of the structure there is one important twist, which is we also want to keep us honest, right, meaning when we go through the through the ideation, right? So through generating the ideas, right? We identify benefits, and that could be, I don't know, productivity, time we save, or even how we can make more money, right? Depending on the business case. But we want to follow through for that benefits, right? So we keep a track of do those benefits materialize once the app or the bot and the whole process was automated, right?
So what's the timeline?
First,
Sorry, like three or 6 months later, you expect something or right away? How long do you let it mature?
Yeah, so it really depends on the process, right? But for example, if you have a smaller initiative, right, that will say, for this team, I'm going to save, I don't know, 10 hours per person monthly, right? Then if you follow up for 3 months and you see that those 10 hours are happening, then you're fine, Okay.
Okay.
But if you have something bigger, right, you're promising $1 million in the first year, you probably want to monitor that that implementation for a little bit longer, right, to see that the money are coming, right?
Makes sense.
Right. Good. Okay. The second direction that we focus, right, after we define the structure, is on the capabilities, right? We want to develop what we call digital fluency skills for our organization, and in our case, this digital fluency was very much tied to the smart automation tools and techniques that we defined, for us in particular, that we use for in PNG. We were targeting the broader organization, right? The broader, operations teams, right? And why is this important, right? Because you could argue, I mean, why spend all this time training everybody, right? Well, there are many benefits to have, to have a skilled organization, but I will just give two examples, right? The first example is if somebody is skilled in the tools of smart automation and the techniques of smart automations, then they will understand what is possible to do with today's technology, right? If they know what is possible, then they will make easier connection with the opportunities that they have, with their work processes, right?
Agreed.
So even if they do not end up, right, doing the actual bots, but they can, I mean, this for sure will help get more ideas, right?
Yeah, that's smart, actually.
And then,
Very smart.
yeah, right? It's a clever way, right?
It's a clever way,
And
absolutely. Now you know.
Exactly. So one Trojan horse, right? To just teach the people, right? Okay. And then of course, I mean, a second benefit is that if you have more skilled people that can actually build bots and apps, right? You can get faster, right? Because you have more people that can actually build bots and apps. And of course, we can have a whole discussion about, okay, but if everybody is building bots and apps, I mean, you could easily go into some kind of anarchy, right? I mean, you need to have some order, right? Some stewardship about, how you, how everybody is building these bots, right? Exactly. Some governance, right? And yes, that's a valid point, and yes, you have to put that in as well, right? Good. So we have the structure, we have the capabilities. There's one more thing missing, and that was the culture. And again, what I mean by this is we wanted to drive a digital culture, right? We wanted to drive the right mindset within the organization. We want people to feel encouraged and inspired. And I know inspired, maybe it's a strong word, but that's pretty much what you need the organization to have. You want them to want to improve themselves. You want them to want to become more efficient. To automate as much as possible their work, right? Because by automating their work, right, they can move away from doing repetitive tasks, and they can actually go and do higher value add work, right? So for sure, this cultural aspect, it's very important. And actually, if I look at all three elements, right, I mean, they're all important. You need all of them, right? But I think probably the cultural one is the more difficult one to to implement and to successfully drive, right? I mean, I can share an example of something that worked very well for us. Okay. I guess I'm getting to the question now. So
yeah, because if it's the toughest, we need to hear, how did you crack the code, basically? What did you do to make it happen?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm going to give you an example, right? And then we can build the discussion, and then Caroline can also jump in. So what worked very well for us was we set up this network of digital ambassadors, right? And we call them digital geeks. I think it's a funny name that actually caught up very quickly, right? So these digital geeks, I mean, these are people from the operations team, right? They are they are not technical people, right? So they don't have a technical background, right? But what they did have was they have this passion, right? for learning new things, for learning about smart automation. They had this passion to become more efficient, right, to automate their work, right? We took these people that they were all volunteers, right? I mean, they keep their job, their existing jobs. It's not like we changed their assignment or anything, right? But we set up this club, Digital Geeks Club. We trained them. They were able to automate their processes, but then they went the extra mile, which meant they actually trained other people within their teams or across the organization, and they actually started to build bots for those people, or together with those people, they taught other people how to build applications, right? So this, and I'm an IT person, right? I have a technical background. I've been in IT for all my professional life, right? So when I go to somebody which is non-IT, right, non-technical background, and I say, you should really use this RPA solution. I mean, it's really easy to learn, right? And that person will look at me and say, yes, maybe it's easy for you because you're an IT person, right? But it's not easy for me because I'm not I don't have a technical background, right? But the same message coming from a digital geek, which is basically a peer of that person.
Yes.
Right, has carries a different weight, right? Because this person will look at the digital geek and say, I know that person. That person is like me. We have the same background, we have the same job. If that person was able to learn, right, and was able to do this, then I can do it too.
It's much easier. It's much easier. I completely understand. But let's pick Caroline's brain then now for a moment. So how do you relate to this story, Caroline? Is this something, is this some sort of a success story that you have seen, or you have different variation of this type of approach for success stories, or even, failures as well? I mean, where did the clients fail and not doing certain things? If you can really share some of your experiences, Caroline, with your global.
I'd love to. And Dan, very well done you. I think you gave a fantastic description and very valuable actually of what is a very good process and program approach to such a sort of change. I mean, we've seen, and what you've described is very much, and I'm really glad you brought the cultural word out. I mean, for us, that's absolutely key in seeing the success of these projects. I mean, it's no secret that digital transformations are not as easy as people first thought 8 to 10 years ago. And I think, as Dan's rightly pointed out, the technology is definitely okay. It's, lots of people can use it. We're now in the citizen developer type tool set. But without the change management and that recognition for the cultural change, these programs at scale are just not successful. So I think, I think what we've seen as quite a big change really only in the last 6 to 12 months, and I think this shows how quickly the technology is actually moving, is this movement to scale. A number of years ago, it was very hard scale. And everyone sort of wants to do it, but then it sort of dies a bit of a death. But actually the reinvigoration of companies recognizing the technology out there and more how to use it, how to design for success using companies like EY, to actually build this whole automation or digital community. I think I really like the term. I haven't heard the geeks term for it. I think that's quite funny.
Yeah, it's kind of nice.
We've had chums, we've had citizen developers, we've had the community, we've had all these different words. But fundamentally, I think it gives people a motivation. It gives people a sense of purpose. It also really encourages this activity of sharing ideas. And I think one of the things that we've seen, because, in the early days, it was very much done from the COE on Excel spreadsheets, access databases, even I saw, that type of thing. But I think, again, like our automation hub, tools like that make it a lot easier to crowdsource this and very quickly get whether this is feasible. When you talked about the types of processes that you've introduced, Dan, whether it's a global process or it's one that's used locally in a team, what's been really great about these tool sets, if people are open-minded to actually trying and feeding the pipeline with these sorts of initiatives, very quickly they can get an assessment of whether it's feasible or not. But again, that really comes down to what we see is the people and the right leadership. You know, this takes leaders that have vision. It takes leaders that are willing to take a risk. It takes leaders that are very clear on what the business outcome is of what they need to achieve. And that, you know, people get a real sense of energy from that in organizations, and that's what we see really helps with the success.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Caroline. I think Dan will also concur. Actually, let me bring a question which is really at the crossroad with your approach. So we understand that we need to keep people engaged and enthused, which is really, really key and at the heart of everything. And they are adapting and adopting their new ways of working, but because this is really a change, basically, a business person that needs to be supported and enabled through technology, which is kind of sometimes a bit of the mystical element. So how are you aligning your human resource management strategy in light of digitalization strategy, Dan? Is this something that you sat down with HR and said, okay, well, because we're doing all of these changes, okay, you have the gigs ambassadors, they're doing this on top, but is there really, are you really thinking about how to, of your next version or next generation of employees or supporters of the programs?
Yeah, so I mean, HR and also, I mean, top management, I mean, I think this, I don't want to undermine the importance and difficulty, but to me that was the easy part. Okay, so, okay, because, you know, the company has, its goals, right? And, the goals cascade down, and it's very clear what the business results that we need to produce, the type of people, I mean, from an HR perspective, the type of employees that we want to have, and, this digital geek attitude, digital geek persona. I mean, they are fully in line with what the pandemic from persona. I mean, they are fully in line. Let me give you an example of how you energize and engage these people, the base, right? Our, organization.
Incentive. How do you incent them?
Yeah. Okay. That's right. Our
incentive. How do you incent them?
So yeah. And with the digital geeks, it's almost many events. So digital geeks, with the digital geeks, we have many. But there is one in particular that has had a huge success, and that was one in particular that has had a huge success, right? And that was, we called it a smart automation hackathon. What happened with this was that we did the idea, the marketing campaign.
It's a global event.
So this was, we did it
It's a global event.
So we did this for different, but there are events like this in different areas. So I'll talk about difference, just to keep it simple as well. But anyway, so we invited individual teams to come forward with their ideas, right? And then we will allocate one digital geek to each team or individual or to each idea, right? And the digital geek will help the team or the individual build the app, right? And at the end, we will, we give what we call the digital geeks award. So we basically reward the best ideas, right, and the best implementation. And you know what we give them as a prize? We give them an Amazon Alexa. So it was like symbolic, right? And exactly, right? And
when is the next one so I can do
exactly. So this was the impact, like we doubled the number of initiatives, ideas that we had, right? Because people responded very well. I mean, it was the whole vibe. But don't underestimate, when you can give something like a cool thing. I mean, it had a huge impact, right? So
I agree. This is really key. This is great, actually. You just have to let us know what is the next one.
yeah. We're planning a different event. We're going to call it the Geeks Olympics now. Okay.
This is great. Actually, we do put in more or less the same thing at EY, and this is how we came up with all of these 1,000 and plus bots actually that are running, and all of these initiatives of automation. We do that, and we incent people really with I don't know if we give them Alexas though, but it's
Yeah.
part of their curriculum actually. And Caroline,
Yeah.
so any thoughts, ideas, outlines, your clients, are they really aligning? Are they really rethinking? I mean, aligning HR strategies with the digitalization, because this is more and more having a bigger impact on people. And with COVID now, I think people understand and how valuable the resources are.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, I think sometimes HR gets a little bit of a bad hit, but actually HR departments were one of the first. I mean, obviously finance did, you know, there was definitely a trend in finance, automating and digitizing initially, but actually HR have been really quick. And I think part of that is not only the internal demand, but also the external demand. You know, if you want to get the best people, you know, in the right age, and you want to go to graduate fairs and be competitive and everything else, you have to offer a digital onboarding process to start off with.
Yes.
You know, also then, you know, you've got to think about, as you said, the whole way of working, you know, even pre-COVID, but even more importantly now, you know, during and post, hopefully post-COVID, that this whole, you know, we've all realized, look at us all here, we're all sitting in our various workspaces, living rooms.
With our cats and dogs.
With our cats and
Yeah.
dogs. I don't have those, I'm afraid. I'm too chicken. But the but you know, we all work virtually. So I think the HR, you know, to be fair, in COVID, I think the pressure on HR departments has been absolutely huge, you know, and I've spoken to sort of numerous HR directors, because fundamentally, you know, the thing that they are most concerned about is keeping their workforce safe. So that in itself takes, but that has also in turn driven an agenda around digitizing processes to make the HR interaction, tracking of employees, keeping the employees safe, making sure they go to the workspace, you know, so all of this thing about now coming out and scheduling when you actually arrive in the office, being tested, the tracing, you know, we know it's been a mixed bag in governments how that's worked, but companies, really a lot of the pressure has gone on to companies to keep them safe, and that's absolutely top of the HR agenda.
True.
So I think, and to the point of incentivization, I mean, we have a large client that when they first rolled out they did it via citizen development, so did a much more bottom down approach to say, hey, we're going to upskill you all in these digital skills. And, you know, after 4 weeks of them launching a campaign, they got all of 12 ideas across a workforce.
Wow.
1,000 people. So they quickly, to Dan's point, they didn't give Alexas, but they did give Amazon vouchers. But they did, to Dan's point, they gave incentives of vouchers. And I think actually the change happened, the incentive, what I noticed absolutely works. I mean, that's a tried and tested method. We know that, you know, across many use cases. But also what happened, I think it's more as people's confidence grows. You know, sometimes people aren't always sure what the exam question is. So I think that's the other thing. Make it very, very easy for your employees to provide you with ideas.
Yes.
And that's what
they need to feel at ease.
Absolutely.
And not in competition with these bots or robots or virtual assistant. They need to feel confident. I think it's really key.
But then Selma, if you take your own EY case study, which I think is absolutely amazing of what you yourselves have done, you know, you've rolled out in a very short space of time, less than 10 months, 140,000 robots over your client facing people's desktops, you know, saving them 30 minutes odd time a week on, you know, giving them more time back to the client work, and also taking out 80 million of training costs.
Amazing.
So, you know, just from usability. So that's also, for me, that's been a really interesting approach, watching that, of how you've almost rolled out a consistent sort of, you know, a selection of examples or use cases, as we sometimes call them, of ways of working. So things like, in your case, it's completing the engagement process so getting a quote, getting a proposal prepared, all of those things that have been automated in your organization. But what's then what's even more exciting, that itself has then spurred on a whole generation of people that then realize, hey, we can also use this robot to do other things. So from a speed and agility point of view, what you've done is really quite groundbreaking, and obviously been very successful.
Sorry, Dan, you were saying?
I mean, I wasn't saying, but I was going to say. So I just wanted to build something because I give the example of the hackathon in which we give the prizes, but there is also a more more serious, more HR approach. So, for example, all our employees they have to develop a certain set of skills, right? And we have business skills, but we also have technical skills. And I was mentioning before, we have these digital fluency skills, right? And for the digital fluency skills, I mean, there is an expectation from the company that everybody has at least like a basic level in the digital fluency skills. But then you also have people that go to the intermediate or the advanced skills on the digital fluency, and then as you go to these advanced skills in digital fluency, then you get access. I mean, more opportunities open up for you, right? So you can get more and more roles, more interesting roles, right? So there is a correlation between the skills that you're willing to develop, and you cannot develop skills just by reading a book. You also have to practice what you learn, right?
Completely.
So you have to build a boat. Okay.
Absolutely.
So there is a let's say a career perspective motivation for people to develop these skills and to contribute. And I mean, I want to give this credit also to our HR department, which is coming in and thinking about these sort of things, right? So this is a more serious approach and more systematic.
Yeah,
not
formal.
just giving
It has to
prizes,
be
right?
formal.
Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. It has to be there. And I think all of the organization really ought to really have that a kind of approach from now on, because digitalization and automation is there and it's going to ramp up even more after this whole crisis, hopefully when it's done. So I think it's this is great. You're really taking the right things and the right approach. I have another question for you. I think so. You talked about global and local. I mean, what's the right balance you think? So what would be the right or the best balance between local versus global? So ideation versus development. The idea, and how do you manage the? You said you have a sort of collaboration platform, but yeah. So what's the balance? People are not always sure about the balance.
Yeah. So and this, I mean, the balancing act. It's a balancing act. So
Yes.
it's it's not like you have a solution for everybody, right? But what we did again. I'm talking from experience. So I don't know if it's the perfect solution, but this is what worked for us, right? So when we look at the ideas that we get. Right. What we'll do, one of the things that we'll do, we'll look for the opportunity to scale up, right? So if we find the opportunity to scale up, right? So for example, it's not just Bucharest that will be able to use it, but it's many more other sites, right? Then we'll approach our spokes in the global teams, right? We have global IT teams, for example, right? And together with them, we assess if this is something that they will take over, right, and develop a global solution, right? And if that's how it goes, then great. Then we have a global solution, and it's going. Okay, it might take longer. I mean, for sure, it will take a little bit longer, right? Because you have to align it with everybody, right? But then if they will say, it's not scalable enough, right? But it's a good investment to do because the benefits justify, the investment. Then we'll do it locally, right? Or we'll do it for a region, right? With what we call local resources, right? This works for us, right? It's never, I mean, you really need to do a balancing act, right? So it really depends on a few factors. But we really, I mean, if something is scalable, we always check with with the globals because we want to be efficient, right?
It makes sense. I think it makes sense, right, Caroline? I mean, this is usually what the clients do, and this is what we also help them do, is really to assess whether it's a good candidate and if the global scalability is ready, right, Caroline?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, tried and tested. And I think the key thing is use the tools out there, because that's, we've seen even with Snowflake recently, how quickly tools change. And what I've noticed most, and I'm not just talking about UiPath here, is that, there's so much good stuff that's coming out and being released, that the whole cycle of the functionality of things that we used to think, process mining, we used to think the tools were quite rubbish a couple of years ago. So there were definitely bad experiences that we didn't have, but it's come on in leaps and bounds. So I think also be open-minded to making your life easier by utilizing these things as well,
Well,
which eases the global challenge somewhat.
Absolutely. It's a pity Wojciech didn't join us today, but the idea was really to share with us his experience of the end-to-end view, because that's where most of the clients do struggle, is really to have that end-to-end process view and how to really capture that information. And actually, we've been able to help a lot of clients through this solution, which is really help capture that process and try to automate the view end to end and make really some reports so the client can really make up their mind whether it's local, global, also how they can really leverage it. But I think this is probably one of the biggest issues that a lot of clients have been struggling with. But usually when you have this type of framework like you talked about, Dan, established, I mean, once you have the framework and everything is documented and everybody really agrees on the expected benefits, and also you go back and really test those benefits and really reassure the business that these are the benefits we talked about and here they are, by the way. I think it's a reassurance, because sometimes it's a bit of a struggle with the business. Okay, you want me to commit, but then what's my return, and is it coming anytime soon? And usually it's not. Sometimes there are so many factors. Actually, it doesn't really rely on one individual. So many intricacies, as you know, Dan. I'm sure you had you had a lot of success stories, but you probably had a couple of failed approaches, like everybody else, right? I have another question for you. So now we're talking about pipeline and scalability. So, do you have any key metrics or any metrics you think that could be valuable to keep track of? Because you know everything needs to be smart these days. You need to be able to measure, as we just talked about now. So number of ideas versus benefits versus ROI. So what are the key KPIs that you think would be, I mean, the top 2 or top 3 ones that you think would be the most valuable ones?
So I think, I mean, when we look at how we measure, our projects, I mean, I'll talk about our projects in the smart automation area, right? So we look at the final KPIs or the key KPIs, right? Like, how hours saved, for example, right? So the productivity that you gain, right? And, it's good to measure in hours, but there are like soft savings and hard savings, meaning, if I saved 10 minutes in average per day for a team of 20 people, it's great. I mean, those people, 20 people, they can do more work, right? Or they can do work. It will be easier for them, right? But that will not translate in a dollar saving for the company, right? Okay. As opposed to, let's say, I can save, 100% of a person, right, out of this 20 people, right? And then, we can reassign that person to go and do other thing, right? And then that's really a hard savings, right? So one KPI will be, I mean, the dollar value, it's always, the end results, right? But there are also like, the in-process measures that we use, right? So for example, you mentioned, I don't know, we had people submitting 50 ideas, over the course of a year. How many of those 50 did we actually manage to implement, right? Or, how many of this, let's say we implemented 10, how many did they actually produce the benefits that they were, they were anticipated to produce, right? Because then you need to look and make some intervention. Maybe, you're not investing the resource in the right place. Maybe you should do, invest it in a different place, right? So, the business measures at the end, I mean, it's always coming to either dollar value, right? Okay. Or could be something more on the stewardship side, right? Because this is also very important, right? You need to look at the compliance and, compliance scores and these sort of things, right? So yeah, I mean, you need to define how success will look like, and you need to define how to measure it, and then you need to be very very serious about measuring it, right? Because also this also helps in building the credibility, right? If I go in front of my right if I say I'm going to say, and people actually take my word, and if I say I'm going to save 3,000 hours in this quarter, my boss would say, okay, so then I can take, I don't know, 1 or 2 people and then give them, different work because you promised me, 3,000 hours, right? So you also have to balance that. I mean, be careful what you promise, right? Because,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So KPIs are really key. That's why I wanted really to bring that topic into this panel, because I think it's all about governance framework, but commitment, and also keeping your word, keeping honest with what you're promising.
yeah.
Otherwise, the business will give you some money once, twice, but then they will turn around and say, no, this is not possible because we're not really, we're not taking as much as we were promised. And usually that's where that's where some of the programs actually fail because of that, because of the lack of commitment, or the issues. There are so many, it's so complex, you know how complex it is anyway. But I think KPIs are really key, and you need to be cautious about them as well.
So, Selma, can I just build on that?
Yeah, and I always, yeah, sure, go ahead, Caroline.
Is that I think the game's changed, actually. I think the game has really changed with front office technology becoming more and more dominant. So I think for us, what we're seeing, we have a huge retailer that's a client of ours, and they use their technology, their digital strategy and their tech transformation to actually monitor the supply chain of items on a shelf. Now, anyone knows, if you're working in a big retailer, obviously if a company like P&G, for example, has paid money to have a particular item advertised or placed in a store, it's very important it's put there. And things like that used to be a very, very time consuming, real sort of strenuous process, frankly, that was often wrong. So if someone came in to audit it, there were big fines that these companies endured. So they've saved from that. And then also the other thing is more about the margin play. So I sort of think, yes, you're right, cost savings, headcount, absolutely. But the margin play is where the big prize is. That's the big thing, that, and also the revenue mix. So there's a margin mix of companies now being able to direct their product by using a digital solution in their market, but also then being able to get a better margin mix from actually the certain products that they are placing in the market, and therefore being more accurate at the customers they're challenging them to. So I really think I would, urge people sort of, I know it's pretty obvious, but to think very carefully about what these things are delivering, because it's really wild now, and we're really seeing that that's a big change on the scalability.
You're probably familiar with MediaMarkt. They do everything online. It's live. All the tag price is changed. So the floor people have no possibility to do anything. They used to do that, but now it's completely aligned against the competition. So like during the day, a hot item can have its price change, and that's completely done with robots. Otherwise, it's not possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So it has a direct impact. So yeah, KPIs are becoming more and more important. And as Dan was mentioning, you need to be cautious of what you promise. Otherwise, you'll get yourself in trouble. Hey, we have a couple of minutes left. Would you like to close this panel? How do you think what would you like to share and tell our audience, Dan?
Well, I think, my closing thought, right?
Yes.
I think, digitization, smart automation, it works. Okay. And I know maybe after today, or maybe, maybe people got the impression that it's really difficult. Well, let me tell you this, the technology side is really not. Right, so the technology side, it's really very simple to to manage. Right, the human side is probably more
complex.
Challenging, right? Yeah, more complex, right? But you really just need a few people that have the passion and energy, and you will be surprised. Right.
Yes,
And exactly, right. And also, if you think that you need strong, technical people to drive, digitization, right, within a company, you might be surprised. I mean, of course, you need them. I don't want to, kick me out of my job, right? But, but I think the passion and energy and the commitment, these are more important, because the technology today reached a stage where it's fairly easy for somebody non-technical to learn it and practice it and then preach it. Right? So that's my closing argument.
I completely agree. And as you can see, and I think Caroline can confirm, I mean, the automation technology providers are doing tremendous jobs to really cover the whole end-to-end, from automation hubs all the way through almost software development. So Caroline, yeah, can you, what would you say for the final words?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would just say enjoy it. I don't know who's on this webinar. To Dan's point, I think we are absolutely, I mean, as I say, the game keeps changing. We've expanded the platform. It's no longer just RPA. It's all about a new integrated, this hyper automation phrase that Gartner are using. And so therefore there is so much benefit to be had. It is, it's not always easy. I'd be lying if I said that. There are challenges with it, but fundamentally enjoy it, because the results that organizations that embrace it are getting,
tremendous,
taking them to the leadership position.
Absolutely.
So have a go.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Caroline. This was really great. I hope our audience appreciated, and talk soon.
Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.